And I will say welcome to Better Surveys Through Scary Movies, fresh ideas from stale cliches. Of course, it is October, which is Halloween time for many people, which means scary movies, horror movies, whatever you're into for this time of year. Hopefully, nothing too scary for you today. My name is Melissa. I'm on the right hand side of your screen here. I am a success enthusiast here at SoGoSurvey, which means I am integrally involved in all of these activities designed to promote your success, like webinars and such. And so I'm very happy to be here with you today. I'm also happy to have with me my colleague Lauren, who I will let introduce herself.
Hey, Melissa. Thanks so much for letting me join on this fun topic. I'm excited to go through all of these scary movie themes.
Very good. Are you a scary movie buff, Lauren, specifically?
I'm not, but that's what I think is so interesting about this.
So usually we've got a good balance today of things to be afraid of. No one, there's no like nothing to be really frightened about. We're not going to jump out. Nothing's going to grab you. Everyone's going to be totally safe the whole way through. But we will highlight some of those things that maybe you should be afraid of. Those lessons that we can learn from these scary movies, even though they are a bit of a cliche, most of them. And the second point here is not to be afraid. Each of these things we've highlighted because, um, yes, they might be scary in the movie, but in real life, there is something that you can learn from them. So we hope you will enjoy our top 13 list of things to be a little bit afraid of, but not too afraid of. Again, if you have any questions as we go through, please feel free to ask, and we'll wrap up with more questions that you might have at the end. So, item number one, Lauren, this is a big one. Don't open the door. What is the fascination in scary movies that people seem to feel the need to open the door?
I feel like it's kind of that fear of the unknown, right? Like they don't know, but we know, and the suspense. It's like almost in every movie, right?
Right, but the thing is, like, they do open the door, even if you're shouting at them, like, the monster's back there, or like, there's a ghost, the murderer's there, whatever it is. People are always opening that door. And, like, are they not afraid? There's a reason they have a door in the first place, right?
Well, maybe it's that they'll never know unless they open it, right?
Good. I think that's a good transition to our point. If you're not in a scary movie, maybe you shouldn't worry so much about opening the door. You'll see these are organized in a little bit of a strategic, thoughtful fashion. For example, very soon, before people even start their surveys, you can sometimes hear people who are like, oh, I don't need to do a survey. I don't really need to know. I think very often for the same reason. Like they're afraid of what might be on the other side. And so sometimes people feel like, oh, it's better not to ask, right? Like if you don't ask, then you won't know that you have a problem. Good
Right.
life philosophy.
Yeah.
Probably not that smart in general in business, working with your employees, customers, etc. But in a scary movie, yeah, we don't want you to open the door. But in real life, you should probably go ahead. Otherwise, we're not going to get very far down this list. I'll tell you what. So brings us to number two, which is another strategy that we see in scary movies. Um, Gorgeous image of Jurassic Park here. You can see this guy is clearly an expert, and he's going to handle this situation with his flair. Lauren, what's the deal with experts? Why why do they think they can handle everything single-handedly?
I don't know. Like this guy's been hanging out with dinosaurs or something.
Mhm.
No, I mean it's a great example. I think that in the scary movies, right, there's always kind of that one person that you know, rises up as the expert and
Mhm.
we want them to be successful, but I think that's what creates kind of the whole, conflict in the story.
Totally agree. A lot of times it's like a scientist or a doctor or something, and so they have like, I don't know, a badge or a uniform or a lab coat, and so we want to trust them, like we want to think. And sometimes they're just there, I think, to give us some background information. Like,
Sure.
did you know that dinosaurs can run? Like, okay, so that's going to be useful information in our plot later. But sometimes those experts don't really last very long, unfortunately, because they know they act like, oh yeah, I know, I always hang out with dinosaurs. I know exactly what to do in this situation. Probably not necessarily the case. It never goes well for people. And while doing a survey is not exactly the same as staring down a Tyrannosaurus Rex, the point here is that no one should go it alone. Just because you're an expert in one area doesn't mean that you know every single thing that needs to be taken into consideration when creating your survey. So even though you might be an expert in, let's say, training, maybe you have some other colleagues who are in marketing or something like this, exactly like this collaboration we have here, just saying. But I think that the idea is to maybe you want to talk to some other people too. Don't go it alone. It's a little bit of a scary picture, but I like this one. Okay, so this brings us to the next one. These are the people who have gone out into, they've opened the door, they've decided to go out into the dark. Lauren, why are they always going out in the dark?
It's like that the unknown, I guess, again, kind of coming back up, maybe.
Hmm.
I mean, they're the ones that, they're the curious ones, I suppose.
I guess that's a nice way of looking at it. These are the people we're also shouting at, like, look at that, like, do you see this white thing behind him? Maybe that's a ghost, maybe it's, who knows what it could be in this movie. But the idea that people are ready to investigate, that's healthy, that's what we want people to be
Mhm.
able to do. But even before you go outside, it's probably a good idea to, I don't know, take a flashlight, something like that, something that's going to help you along your way. Clear parallel here. Before you start your survey, there's some things that you probably need to know in advance, like who is your audience? Clearly, what kind of language you're going to be using, that sort of thing is going to be related to your audience. Also, do you have their contact information? Do you have email addresses? We see all kinds of times people are excited about, pre-populating or sending direct invitations, and then they realize they don't actually know any information about those people and they don't have their email addresses. So it changes things up pretty quickly, and it's better to find that out sooner rather than later. I feel bad for this guy, but I don't
one
know that
one
it's
small
gonna go very
flashlight.
well. Right. I don't know that it's
Right.
gonna go very well for him. I'm sorry to say. Which brings us to this next one. So what's your thought on scary movie music, Lauren? What kind of role does that play in your scary movie experience?
I would say that it's definitely there to kind of set the tone. It creates that suspense. It's like one of the clues or one of the things that we all
Mhm.
recognize, right?
Right. Yeah, I like this. I chose this image because you can see I looked at a lot of scary images to prepare this prepare this webinar. But this idea that if you're laying in bed at night and you just see light from the hallway, maybe you're not too worried about it. But if you start to hear creepy music, maybe you should maybe you should get that flashlight out and get ready and figure out what's going on in your house. I think that idea that there's something else going on. There's never just a survey going on. There's always something going on in like the life cycle of maybe the customer cycle, the customer journey, customer experience, especially um, keeping in mind that there's a big picture. Um, we talked about the other day on another discussion about there to everything there's a season, right? And I think the same thing is true here. So, do you think this is true for all audiences, Lauren? Like, does every audience have its own season?
I think so, and I think that it can vary. It can vary internally with your own employees as well as you know with your customers. So
Mhm.
finding those right times in your cycle in the market, finding looking for the clues for when might be the best time to engage with them will
Mhm.
definitely help elevate those surveys.
I do love the idea that there's just like background music somewhere all the time. Like if you just came in the morning and it was like, I don't know, like wrestling, entrance music, like you have something really pumping you up or something
Right.
really, subtle and relaxing. But I think having that kind of music would be clues. And if you don't hear the music, probably you need to look for the clues yourself. This one, I will just pause here. Um, Very often we find that in films there is the crazy guy. This is somebody who is sort of a doomsday kind of guy, like the end is near, the aliens are coming, there's a monster in the woods, nobody's seen it except me. Um, Rarely does he put out a nice sign like this with these cute pumpkins, but the idea that like there's somebody who knows what's going on and nobody believes them. Why do people not believe this quote unquote crazy guy?
It's like the I was abducted by aliens and returned to Earth.
Oh yeah, I'm the one who's here to let you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, Well, I do think that there could be some merit behind the crazy guy's claims, right? I mean, and again, it kind of ties in nicely with the clues. If people in the office are, maybe uh, saying or skeptical about your survey, investigate, find out what's behind that. Are they just worried that people have too many projects going on, so that you might not get the participation? Take those types of clues into mind, so that then maybe you find a better time. Maybe
Mhm.
you listen to what they have to say. There could be some merit there.
I think that's a very polite way of saying it. Like there could be some merit, right? I think in the movie we know that if they listen to the crazy guy too soon, there won't be a film, right? Like they'll be like, oh, now we'll
Right.
deal with this situation. But I think very often, like in the survey mindset, we don't want to listen to other people because we want to keep going. Like we need things done. And someone might say, oh, well, last year, if we tried to do something at this time, didn't work because you don't want to just say,
Yeah.
stop. You want to say, like, well, what happened? What can we learn from it? It's very easy to sort of just brush by, yeah, 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 we know, we already did that, we already did that. But getting that feedback is really, really important. Even though people don't come out and say signs like this, there's usually sort of an indicator that they're trying to be helpful. And so that's the best way to take it. This is the best one, Lauren. What percentage of films do you think have this? Everything that can go wrong will go wrong. Oh, let's call the police. Oh, the phone's out. Let's drive away. Oh, the car won't start. Oh, I'm running away. I said earlier, I tripped over a banana in the desert. Like, there's always some silly thing that happens, and it's every single thing that can happen. A wrong will. Murphy's Law. Do you think this is like multiplied more times in scary movies?
I think so, and I think that's what makes it such an excellent cliche, because I think we kind of all have these fears. Like anytime you're working on a big project, right? A presentation, even a webinar like this, it's like okay, what could go wrong, and you try your best to prepare for all of those things, especially in a survey, right? I mean, you're putting out this survey, you're checking off the boxes, hoping to make sure that you've done everything to prepare.
Mhm.
There's just so many, horrors I can think of with a with a survey that give me the chills right now. So, your question there, what's your plan? Is important.
Yeah, I like to think of the NASA launch plan, so those sort of things. If that, nobody in NASA is like, okay, send some flashlights along with them, and they don't think to check the batteries like 15
Right.
times and have backup batteries. The same kind of thing. Okay, well, if your landline is cut, oh, and there's no cell service. See, it used to be that the landline had to be physically cut in films, and now it's just like, oh, there's no service. Or like the internet is down. That would be the worst thing that could
Right.
happen. I think is like the end. So yeah, having a plan and making sure that you stick to it. Obviously, you're going to continue to refine that plan. NASA refines its plan for every project that it has, but that's sort of a gold standard kind of idea to stick with. Along this line is, I love this picture. This is from a film that's like 1932, so it looks scary just by itself. But the
She looks
fake
very,
out,
yeah.
right? The fake out is like who it could be anybody. So I used there's a couple of them, right? Like the freak out where it is the monster who's behind you. But I called this one the fake out because very often it'll happen that there'll be super intense, suspense or fear of something that's happening, and everyone's really scared, and then suddenly, you've got the shoulder, a hand on the shoulder behind you, and you jump and you realize, oh, it's like your best friend, or oh, it's your husband, or something like this. So that's a fake out. So I put this one on here because you're gonna be scared at some point, but it's better if it's by somebody you know. Right.
Yeah. This one makes me think of like the what was that? Or, the
Mhm.
curtains moving and it's just a cat.
It could be anything. Yeah, it's clearly the gigantic monster that's been outside, but suddenly it fits behind your curtains. Like anyone who's ever been a small child knows like how terrifying your imagination can be. So it's better to have that sort of tested. So try it out. Send it to, and this parallels clearly to test surveys, test invitations, because if I've built a survey and I think it looks really good, I want to send it to you, Lauren, clearly before anyone else sees it, because you're my test case. Like if Lauren thinks it doesn't make sense, then probably it doesn't make sense. So if heaven forbid, like I send it out and branching isn't applied correctly or something like that. So I want to make sure that I've got all of those bases covered with a friendly audience rather than somebody who's going to attack, I guess. That's a big one. Here's another one. This is a real fear that a lot of people have. First in surveys, but let me say, of course, in horror movies, especially in sort of like the series of, hey, all these teenagers are going to go hang out together in a haunted house. I bet they all survive. Those kinds of scary movies where people just start disappearing along the way, and then there's one person left. And probably you can tell in advance like who that person is who's going to make it to the end. So you got to be like adjust your sympathy so you don't worry too much about the rest of them. Like in a science fiction movie, these are like the extras. It's like people who don't have names. Like they're just going to disappear in the first few minutes of the film. I mean, not to be too morbid about this, but this is exactly what happens. People just disappear. Would you say this is like the main fear that people have in sending out surveys?
I was going to say, going back to audience, it's like, okay, we've done so much work to build like the perfect survey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you put it out there and yeah, you're really hopeful, right? So making sure that you've addressed the right audience and are going to get the responses back is certainly one of the big fears of sending a survey.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's some preparation in advance. Don't be afraid. Like not everyone will usually respond, but ideally more than one person will be responding to you. So preparation there too.
Yeah.
This is the most dramatic image that I could find for this one. In fiction, you call it Deus ex machina, like God is in the machine, like something really dramatic is going to happen. Sometimes it's like, you know, a hand comes out of the clouds and rescues people, or aliens come out of nowhere. In a horror movie, it's like something like this, like there's just a crazy monster. It doesn't make any sense, and somehow it's just been included there to show you like, oh, actually we need to just advance the plot, or actually we didn't know how else to rescue people.
Right.
So it could be a good thing or a bad thing, but it's definitely not something that you should rely on. So probably probably go about your business, make the plan. Don't count on a miracle to save you if you don't have a plan. But also remember, these problems don't just come out of nowhere. There's not just like a giant octopus behind you. Most of these things are things that you can anticipate. And, there are some things you can't anticipate. But most of the time, your planning will help you to avoid them. I don't know. I mean, Lauren, have you ever encountered a giant octopus? I'm guessing that's not.
I haven't, but I will say that there's really no such thing as survey magic. So you're right, having that plan and making sure that you're executing on it and you're not just waiting and keeping your fingers crossed that there's going to be a, like you said, a plot twist at the end.
Right, like, oh, I sent out my invitation just to myself, but suddenly 1,000 people responded. Like that's
Right.
not how it happens. You actually have to, unfortunately, all those people who are just waiting to respond to surveys out there.
Well, and I
We're
think the
looking
same
for
thing
them.
the same thing can be said too about your data. You can't you have to be willing to accept whatever, you get back, right? Like you said,
Mhm.
going through that door, what
You're right.
whatever you get, for better or for worse.
That's exactly right. So the other thing is this next one here. You're right. You have to accept whatever it is, but you have to pay attention to it. You can't just fling open the door and then run away, right? You have to be able to pay attention. This goes back to the rustling curtain you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Like, oh, maybe it's just a cat. There's some amorous couple who's out there, and the guy's like, no, it's just the wind. Don't worry about it. Or the other one I mentioned, I liked as well is like, oh, it's just an urban legend. That's not real. As soon as you say that's not real. This is exactly what will appear behind you, like the man with a hook as a hand or some, mythical creature that you never thought existed. It's never just the wind. It just means like this is all also by the time you have your survey out, you can't just walk away. You have to pay attention to what's going on. Um, a really good way to do this is keeping track of, if you've sent this out through an invitation, people are going to be responding to that invitation, not just through the survey, but replying to you as well. So making sure that if people are saying, "Hey, my answer option didn't appear there," or like my work location wasn't on your list, all of those kinds of things are really important because if people are hitting hiccups along the way, they might start dropping out, and it means that more people might not even, we know the statistics of how many people actually reach out with their problems to be solved. Most times people just walk away. It's the same as customers with their bad experiences. They just walk away. They don't even tell you about it. So being able to be attentive to that is really a big deal.
Well, and I think also, just as in the movies, like these people are acting on a hunch, like what was that? They heard something,
Mhm.
they're thinking something. And the same thing goes with your survey. If you're not starting to see the responses or if something just isn't feeling right or looking right
Mhm.
once, especially once you launch, ask those questions and start to kind of, evaluate. Like you said, look for the clues, pay attention.
I agree. Every time I launch a survey, I'm going to just admit here that I am a little nervous. Like anything could happen, but it means I have this like heightened sense of awareness. I guess these
Right.
people don't know that they're in a scary movie, right? I'd be like, oh, I was feeling normal, and then suddenly I realized in a scary movie, and I really needed to pay attention to everything. But like you launched a survey, so tune in. This one I love. Do you ever watch these old style movies? This
Yes,
is
absolutely.
and Frankenstein's monster, not Frankenstein as commonly misconstrued, is coming to get you. But like, how fast does he move? Not at all. So there's always this dramatic, tension. It's not so much suspense as being like, can this person not get up and walk away? Like the guy is coming to you so slowly, and it is very scary. It is very dramatic. But sort of the logic kicks in, and it's like, really, is that how? That was like 2 minutes he was coming at you, and you just sat there and screamed. You have to worry about these people a little bit. So sometimes the suspense is not really that suspenseful. Um, which brings us to track survey. You can see how everything just in my mind connects immediately to the product. One of the things about when your survey goes out, like we said, like there's this sort of nervousness of will anybody be responding? Do people have something to say? We do hope that you are using Track Survey. It's a really great feature within the Distribute tab of your platform. But the idea that once you send something out, you can find out right away if people are getting it, if people are responding. You can track that, if there's any delivery issue, if the survey invitations have bounced, as well as who's participating through other links that you may have sent out, like on your website or in the newsletter. When you find out what's going on there, you can make those changes, before it's too late, to be dramatic. And in this case, it's because your survey closes, and at that point, you can't be running after people and saying, hey, would you please already have responded to my survey that's closed? That's just sad at that point.
Well, right, and just like in the movies, it's kind of like they wait till like the last minute, and then they're
Mhm.
tripping over themselves, and everything kind of becomes messy. So, same thing applies perfectly to your survey. Track it while it's live, and then hopefully you won't be doing exactly what you just said, chasing after people.
Come back. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. This is what happens too. People have no sense of what's going on out there until the last minute, which is really scary, especially if you need to have these results, if you need to report them, share them with, your boss or the rest of your team. You can't just be wandering around hopeful, like in the dark. Again, we've talked about flashlights and the batteries being checked. The easy one here late in the process is that when your survey is live, you can check not just the participation with Track Survey, but you can actually check in on the results. Doesn't mean that you're going to share them with everybody right now, but you can keep track of what's happening. Again, that's also to help with your participation. So you can reach out to people, make sure they've gotten the link, they've gotten the responses. You're hearing from all the different groups. Response rate report is a really great one to be able to see, who are you hearing from out of the expected groups. If you expect 10 people from the communications team, but there's only 2, but you've got 100% participation from marketing, for example, you can do that appropriate follow-up, as well as if you're going to need to take action on the results. You're planning for an event, something like that, and you need to know how many, what kind of supplies that you'll need. All of that is very, very useful to know before the last minute, before you're out wandering around in, in the woods.
Right, right. We're not going to leave you in the dark. Your reports are there to give you that visibility, right?
That's exactly right. This is why we're not doing a, Blair Witch style thing here. Like it would just be, it's just too frightening by the fact that you're in the dark. It doesn't matter if it's good things or bad things out there. It's just better to know. Which brings us to the last one. Um, this is a very famous Bruce Campbell movie here where you can see that he feels very confident that he can take on anything. P.S. Spoiler alert: he can't. This is the plight of, just similar to the experts. The experts think they can know everything, and the tough guys, or girls. We don't say tough girls because girls are too smart to do this kind of thing. I'm just going to say sorry. The one who thinks he's the hero. Be the hero. Everyone wants
Yes,
to be the
right.
hero,
Everyone, yes.
right? But it doesn't always go well. If you need help, you should definitely get help. This is the same in horror movies. This is the same in life. This is the same in surveys. That's why we're here. That's why we're having this conversation today, so we can make sure that people, think through the right steps of the process. We haven't even gotten into the platform at all today. Pretty high level stuff, but the idea being that planning and that high level content is the most important work that you can do. It's not like which button do you click. You can click all the right buttons and still not have a good plan, and you might not be that successful. So don't be a tough guy, Lauren.
Well, and you mentioned this before, but going within your organization for a lot of these planning, for a lot of input, is a great place to start. But then, when you're ready for some of the more technical pieces, knowing that they can reach out to someone here at SoGoSurvey and get that assistance is another way to get the help that you need.
Totally. No chainsaws here, but we've got everything else. So just a quick rundown of our highlights for today, and then we'll do a quick peek into the platform so you can see where those resources are. First of all, get started. Don't be afraid to do the survey. Don't be afraid. But make sure that you get help from your team. They can help you, give you some background information. They can give you clues on what's going on in your organization or with your target audience. Talking to members of that target audience is really smart, so that they're not too surprised when that survey comes out. Um, be aware that there are experts in your organization or outside of them. Don't think of them as that crazy guy or that person who's trying to slow you down or be smarter than you or as being patronizing, any of those things. Do keep in mind that everyone has some input to give, and some of it can be very valuable too. The fact that everything that can go wrong will probably go wrong. If there's one puddle to trip in, you probably can trip in it. But the more planning that you do, including testing with your colleagues, friends, etc., the better off you'll be. That goes along well with knowing your audience in advance to make sure that you're planning to reach them directly, whether it's through good communication, whether it's engaging content and feature usage in the survey itself. The more the merrier, because you're not going to have some, throng of participants who come out of nowhere to help you. They're not going to come out of nowhere and destroy you either, but you want to keep track of everything that's happening, because it's not some dramatic story. It's really what you need to do. So you're the author who creates what needs to happen. Next, then, it wasn't just the win. Pay attention to clues that you see along the way. That includes, feedback that you're getting from participants, as well as tracking the response rate and content that you're getting back in your reports. Finally, don't be a tough guy. If you need to get some information, you can always check into our platform, check in the Help Center up here. A lot of really good content up there. Beautiful looking user guide, I don't mind saying, and some very nice webinars from some very lovely people who are always happy to talk to you. You can always track in with our video content as well. And most of this is also available on our website, SoGoSurvey.com. So, Lauren, any closing thoughts on this list before we wrap up today?
I was going to say, and now I'm just in the mood for a scary movie.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. So if you do have any questions, you're more than welcome to chat with us as we sign off today. We'll be glad to follow up with you on the chat. And if you have any further questions, again, we'll be following up and sharing this recording with you later today. So I'll pause here. I'll wrap up our recording, and then I'll stay online for a few minutes to see if there are any additional questions that anyone has. But in short, I'll say thank you for joining, and we will look forward to seeing you again next time and online at SoGoSurvey.com. Thanks so much, Lauren.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.